Well, I'm here at the beautiful Coast Inn of the North Hotel in Prince George, in downtown Prince George, with the Honorable Shirley Bond, MLA, for many years for Prince George Valemount. Shirley, it's such a pleasure to be here with you today.
Well, thank you, first of all, for making the trip, for all the work you do in the Robson Valley region. Deeply appreciate it and have appreciated our relationship over the years.
As I have as well. We're going to kind of go through your career and your career highlights, and I learned a lot of things because I hadn't done a lot of deep research into your past, so I didn't find any skeletons.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah. So we'll kind of talk a little bit about, to begin with, a little bit about your life before you became an MLA, because I found that kind of interesting. You married your husband Bill in, what year was it, 1979?
Yes, it was.
1979. Raised two children, and they have two children as well, so you have two grandchildren.
That's right.
I know you love them very much. Younger people won't realize this probably, but 1979 was 3 years before the Canadian Charter of Rights enshrined women's rights into the Charter. What were you doing at that time? I mean, you were young, you were in your 20s there. What were you doing at that time, and what were your aspirations at that point, and how might, the gender challenges have come at you at that time?
Well, I was raised in a home where I had parents that were incredibly encouraging in terms of us choosing a career path. Whatever would make us happy, successful, that was okay with my mom and dad. But I am the daughter of a Dutch mother, and one of the things that she taught me was to work hard. And my dad always told me, do the right thing and make a difference. I've never forgotten those things. And so I always had a heart for public service. I thought a lot about giving back and how you do that. Very interested in education from early on in my life. I loved my years in school. So I think I was very lucky to grow up in a home where discussion, debate, looking at current events, thinking about how you give back, how do you improve the world we live in, that was encouraged every day at the dinner table and in the conversations we had. So I think I was destined for a career in public service. Not sure that it was always meant to be politics, but that's the path I ended up on.
Right. And what would have been the first thing you undertook in that sort of public service, just to explore the waters a little bit?
Well, I was involved in student council when I was in school, and it made a very significant impression on me. And I can actually remember attending a school board meeting when I was a student, and I remember the chair's name. Her name was Jean Kellett, and I was so impressed with her leadership style. She was very matter-of-fact. She led the board, the school board, and so I think that made an impression on me. And the other thing that I was very lucky to participate in was a Rotary citizenship program, which took me to Ottawa when I was in high school.
Oh, okay.
And, I met the MP of the day, Frank Oberle, and visited his office and Parliament Hill, all of those things. And so I think that all of those things influenced my choice over time.
Right, that stuck with you a little bit. So you were a young mom at the time, young working mom at the time. You got a job with the Continuing Education Department of the Prince George School District, eventually becoming its business manager. How did you get into that job, and did you enjoy it?
Well, it was really a focus on adult learning, and I was very interested in looking at how adults could improve their education, looking at additional courses that people could take. So it really fit with the interests I had when it came to lifelong learning, and that really was the basis of the work we did. I was very privileged to work with Jack Hotel. He led the Continuing Education Department, adult education as it was then known. But it gave people a second chance, a chance to look at how they could improve their skills. Loved that job, loved working in the school district, and was very grateful for the skills that I was taught with a leader like Jack Hotel.
And you probably took a lot of that with you when later on, we'll talk about that later on, but you were the advanced education minister.
I was.
Right, so you're probably maybe the only one who ever had experience with advanced
It
education.
could have been, and I must say that was my very first cabinet post, so
Okay.
it was a very steep learning curve, though.
Right, but at least it was something you were somewhat familiar
Yes.
with. Right. In 1993, you ran for and were elected to your first of 3 terms on the Prince George School Board, the last term as chair. So this is your first public office. What pushed you to let your name stand on that first of many ballots that you would have for public
Well,
office?
we still talk about that with some of the friends that encouraged me. And I actually started to be involved in the education system when our twins started kindergarten. And I remember going to the Parent Advisory Council meeting the very first time. Our kids had just started kindergarten. And I know that my husband was very surprised when I came home and told him that I'd been elected chair of the Parent Advisory Council. And we laughed then, but it was really the start of a journey through that whole decision-making process. You start at the school level and you're involved there. I was the hot lunch mom, and I absolutely loved it. A group of moms and dads, we would create lunches at Carney Hill Elementary School, and I, to this day, credit that group of parents for helping instill in me that desire to see improvement, not just in the education system, but more broadly. And so there were a couple of particular moms who sat me down one night and said, "We think you need to put your name on the ballot." And so we literally met in a kitchen, created a campaign team, put my name on the ballot for the first time, and I still remember that day when I saw my name on the ballot. It's actually hard to vote for yourself. You sort of think, okay, I know I need to vote for me, but so that was my first venture. We had handmade signs. We met in a kitchen to plan our strategy, and I was elected, and I finished second with an entire group of incumbent school trustees. So that was really my start, and who knew at that time that I'd go on to become the Minister of Education, basically after being a hot lunch mom at Carney Hill Elementary School.
Yeah. So, but what exactly pushed you to do it? Was it just people said, "Hey, you'd be good at this," or did you have some aspirations of, I want to make some changes here?
Well, I think it was about ensuring that that where we live here in northern British Columbia, that our students, our families have the best possible opportunities for a great, top-notch public education. And that really mattered a lot to me. And I think it was about, it's easy to sit on the sidelines and have ideas and at times be critical. But you really need to get on the playing field if you're going to influence or shape change. So, it was terrifying to think that, to see your name on a ballot is a frightening thing for many people. But I also took the responsibility very seriously and felt enormously privileged to be elected by the people here. And I tried to honor that faith and trust over the course of 2 decades of my career.
So the pathway to education ministry is to start as a school lunch mom. Is that?
That's right.
You would advise that?
I always tell moms now and dads when I see them working at schools and, they're involved in District Parent Advisory Council, I say, be careful what you wish for because you never know where the path will lead. And I can honestly tell you, in my wildest dreams, I would never have anticipated where my career took me over the course of many, many years. And at times I was surprised by anyone, by some of the appointments I was given and the trust that was placed in me by the people that I represented.
Mm-hmm. You worked quite a few years in public education, and for that you were given the BC Interior North and Yukon Woman of Distinction Award for your work in public education. What did that award mean to you?
Well, it was very humbling because, every day in classrooms across this province, teachers, staff in schools, they work so hard to create an amazing public education system. And there are challenges. There always are. There's never enough resources. There's always, more need. So to be selected for an award of that magnitude was very humbling for me. And it also, though, inspired me to continue to work hard and make sure that I did my homework and that I spoke up for the people who lived here in this part of the province. So always humbled by those kinds of awards, grateful, but also driven to continue to improve and be better at the job, whatever job I was given.
Yeah, that's great. Let's move on to 2001. So 2001 was the Special Olympic Summer Games, and you were named Protocol Director. So how did that happen? And describe your role. What did you do?
I have always had a passion for supporting Special Olympics. And the opportunity came about as a result of my public service on the school board. And, they were looking to put together a steering committee. And it was just a perfect fit for me. I absolutely loved that experience. And it also taught me about the importance of being inclusive. One of the things that I am most proud of is my staff here and my office here, we have had a Special Olympian, a person with a disability, work in my office for many years. And she is a part of our team. We care about her. I'm often on the sidelines of the events that she participates in, and I'm going to continue to do that. As my career has ended, that passion and that care certainly has not.
Oh, nice. What kind of things did they have you doing as protocol officer?
You had to organize the medal presentations and make sure that you followed the expectations laid down by the BC Special Olympics organization. And as fate would have it, the Special Olympics Summer Games are returning to Prince George next summer.
Oh, nice.
So I fully anticipate stepping up and looking at being involved in that event. Once again, it's almost a full circle for me. I started there in 2001 and will continue, I hope, to be involved in 2025.
Yeah, that's wonderful. In 2002, you were presented with the Queen Elizabeth II's Golden Jubilee Medal, awarded to Canadians who had made outstanding and exemplary contributions to their communities or to Canada as a whole. It's quite an honor. What did receiving that medal mean to you?
Well, I looked at some of the others that had received that honor, and it was actually surprising, and again, great deal of gratitude to be recognized with that honor. Most recently, I was awarded the King's Coronation Medal, so I have the set now, I suppose. But I think it reflects the way people look at your public service. I have always believed that it's my responsibility to give back, to serve the public. And so I felt unbelievably privileged to be in a group of people across this country, both with the Queen's Medal and now the King's Coronation Medal, to be included in that group of people. It's very humbling, and I'm very grateful. And it is something that I can share with my grandsons, teaching them about the importance of giving back and being involved.
Yeah, that's great. Well, it's a great segue, public service, in talking about your political career. You were sworn in May 16, 2001, as the first time for MLA for, at that time was called Prince George Mount Robson, with 62% of the Valemount vote. In 2005, you ran again and received 47% of the vote in Valemount. But then you went on to be reelected in 2009, as we all know, in 2013, 2017, 2020, which was your sixth term. And then your support in Valemount never again dipped below 55%. It's quite an impressive record for somebody to keep going that long and to be working that hard and to be rewarded by the faith of the public for that long. You hold a mighty impressive political resume. From 2004 to 2009, you were the 10th Deputy Premier of BC. I was really surprised to hear that, but it's a relatively new thing, started in the 70s. And a fair number of women were Deputy Premiers ahead of you. I thought, well, maybe she was the first Deputy Premier as a woman, but no, that was not true. But in 2011, from 2011 to 2013, you were the first woman in BC to hold the position of Attorney General, a title you held while serving as BC's Minister of Justice. And then from 2020 to 2022, you were the leader of the official opposition and the interim leader of the BC Liberal Party. And you managed to keep all your hair during that what must have been a pretty trying time. You've held numerous cabinet portfolios over the span of 16 years, or nearly 16 years. Your first post was, as you mentioned earlier, from 2001 to 2004 as Minister of Advanced Education. So with your background in education and on the PG School Board, it seemed like a great fit. Again, you were thrown in with as a rookie MLA into a very difficult portfolio. It always has been and always will be, just because of the funding challenges that go along with that. What was that like to be in that portfolio in your first posting?
The whole experience was quite surreal. I was so excited to be elected as a member of the Legislative Assembly that I honestly hadn't given a lot of thought to being a cabinet minister. And I remember sitting with Bill one night and we were watching global television, and they were talking about, they were speculating about who might make a Campbell cabinet. And honestly, Bill and I were stunned to see my face appear on the TV screen, thinking that I was a contender for a cabinet post. And it was actually quite stunning to think about that. I was just so excited to be elected as an MLA. But the actual appointment process is very, very secretive. You don't know who else is going to be in cabinet. You know very little. You're asked to meet the Premier in a very specific location. I met with Premier Campbell. I had no idea who else was in the building. It was all done very, very secretly. And you don't find out who's in cabinet until the day the cabinet is announced.
Is that right?
And people walk into the room and it's, oh, you're in cabinet, or what's your job? And you don't even tell people until the Premier actually makes the announcement. So it was absolutely unbelievable for me. But Premier Campbell was a very determined premier, and so when you were appointed, he handed you basically a to-do list and said, I am going to offer you the position of Minister of Advanced Education, and if you accept, here are the expectations I would have of you. And I remember looking at 3 pages of major expectations. You actually sign an oath of confidentiality, of all of those things. And of course, there's a great deal of vetting that goes on when you're a cabinet minister as well, your personal life and all of those things. So it was an unbelievable honor. It was terrifying at the moment that it happened. I remember walking into the legislature and thinking to myself, I have the keys to this building. How is that possible? I'm a lunch mom from Carney Hill, and here I am. Advanced education was the 3rd largest ministry in government, and I'd never been an MLA before. And so the learning curve was steep, but it taught me to work very hard, early mornings and long days. And I've maintained that reputation for more than 2 decades.
Yes, you have, and everyone knows it too. Well, that's a very interesting process. I wasn't aware that it was that secretive. And so, as you said, the learning curve, just being an MLA for the first time, the learning curve is steep, right? As you get your feet wet, never mind being one of the biggest cabinet positions that they have there.
That's true, and I think one of the things that I learned very early on, and it took some bumps to get to that place, the work you do as a constituency MLA is the most important part of the job. People think that being a cabinet minister is pretty special, and I agree with that, and I am very, very lucky to have held, senior cabinet portfolios for 16 years in my career. But what you do on the ground, at home, being that constituency MLA, is really what matters most. And it took me a bit of time, obviously, to settle into the role of being a cabinet minister. The workload was very heavy, but I knew from the beginning that my heart was at home, and I always needed to remember who sent me to Victoria. And that has literally been one of the principles of my time in public office, and that is remember who sent you there and what your primary job is, and that is taking care of speaking up for the people who sent you to Victoria in the first place.
Yeah, that's great. In 2005, you became the Minister of Education and the Minister responsible for early learning and literacy, a portfolio you held until 2009. So really you had an 8-year run in the education ministry and various things. We've already discussed, you enjoyed doing that. What was your biggest accomplishment in your time in the education ministry?
Well, there were some very difficult times, and teachers were very unhappy with our government during periods of that periods that we were in government, and that was difficult for me. I have extremely high regard for people who devote their lives to teaching our young people and our young adults, and so it was very difficult. We had a prolonged teacher strike, and it was very painful. And one of the things that I did when that ended was we made a commitment to visit every school district in this province, to actually show up in staff rooms and talk to teachers and staff and parents. And I can tell you it was not easy. And there are still lingering feelings with many teachers today. I believe that education is so critical, and early learning and literacy. One of the things I learned was we look at graduation rates and we wonder why at that time, we had 28 to 30% of our kids who didn't graduate. And when you did the homework, you looked and learned that early learning would make a big difference for those kids. We need to help parents and families get those kids ready for school. So one of my projects was to start the Strong Start program, which is a program where parents or caregivers could come with a child, an early learning and early literacy program. And I'm very proud of that. It continues today in somewhat of a different format, but it meant that families who didn't necessarily have the opportunity to, spend time or the resources to put kids in preschool, that they had an opportunity free where they could go and take their children. So I'm very proud of the work we did on Strong Start and certainly the early learning and literacy aspect of that ministry.
Oh, that's great. From 2009 to 11, you were Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure, appointed by Gordon Campbell again. In 2011, you were named the combined Minister of Public Safety and Solicitor General in the Christy Clark government. At that time, the Ministries of Justice and the Solicitor General rolled into one, which is an interesting experiment, in an effort to reform and modernize the provincial justice system. But it lasted only a year. You became BC's first female Attorney General at that time. It seems like a pretty confusing time. What went on in that time? What happened there?
Well, first of all, it was an incredible opportunity for me as a woman to hold that portfolio. It was made even more complicated by the fact that I am not a lawyer. And as you can imagine, the Attorney General is the person responsible to government for ensuring that, the government follows the law, provides legal advice, and all of those things. It was the most difficult job I have ever had, and I had to rely on exceptional support. We had a lawyer that came and worked alongside me. I wasn't the first non-lawyer. There have actually been 3 in history in a variety of political parties. But not only was the work complicated, but I needed to actually demonstrate that I could credibly serve as the Attorney General, not just because I was a woman, but because I wasn't a lawyer. Right. And so it was the most stretching personal time that I have ever had in terms of being on top of my files, knowing the issues. And I tell everyone that I had a media scrum in the hallway at the legislature every single day of my career when I was the Minister of Justice and the Attorney General. And on the very last day of the last legislative session, the cameras were turned off and the media smiled and let me through the corridor. But I had to prove myself. And to be honest, I had to prove it to myself that I actually had the ability, the skill to manage a ministry of that magnitude. It was very complicated, as you can imagine. I'm grateful for the faith that Premier Clark had in me, and I tell everyone that she had more faith in me than I had in myself. But it was an unbelievable opportunity for me, something I to this day, when I see my photo, there are groups of people in the legislature that have their photos, obviously the premiers, the clerks, the attorneys general do as well. And I remember a little girl from Valemount. They had driven the community bus from Valemount to Victoria. And a little girl walked down the hall with me and she said, Ms. Bond, we walked down the hall where all of the pictures of the attorneys general were, and they were all men. And by the way, most of them had facial hair. And so the hallway was, and black and white.
Right.
And so I said to that little girl from Valemount, she said to me, there are no girls on that wall. And I said to her, there will be. And so when my picture was added to the lineup of attorneys general, I said to my staff, I'm going to wear the brightest pink jacket that anyone has ever seen. And so now when young women stand in that hallway and look down the hallway, the pink jacket stands out, but so does the fact that subsequent to me being the Attorney General, 2 other women have followed in that role. And so it's something I'm enormously proud of, and I'm very proud of my pink jacket story and that little girl from Valemount who noticed that there were no women on that wall. Well, there are now.
No, that's great. Glass ceiling shattered.
Yes.
That must be a proud, not just that, but having taken on that role that is not in your expertise, your area of expertise, and working it through so hard as you do. It's a testament to your work ethic and to your principles, I think.
I think it also gives me the opportunity to literally say to people, you know, you don't know what path is going to open up for you. I could never have imagined that I would be the Attorney General of British Columbia. It wasn't even on my wish list at all. I didn't see myself in that role. And I think it gives me the chance now to say to young women and to girls, like the little girl from Valemount, you know, that this too is possible. And I very much believe that if you can't see it, you can't be it. And so we need to continue to remind young women today that yes, they can take on those roles. Let's face it, if I could take on the role of Attorney General without being a lawyer, there's a lot of things that are possible for women today. And I'm very proud of the work that we did together. But I'm also grateful to Premier Clark for having the foresight and the courage to, first of all, name a woman, and secondly, someone who wasn't a lawyer.
All right. I'm sure she must have taken some heat for that.
She did, actually. And in fact, there was a lot of discussion and there was a lot of skepticism in the legal world about the fact that a non-lawyer was the Attorney General. But I worked very hard to earn credibility. And it also gave me a unique perspective. When you're going to reform and look at how you do things differently in the justice system, it's very hard to do it when you're on the inside. And so even the staff that I worked with in the Ministry of Justice, at times they were reluctant and resistant. And yet we pushed forward. You know, we held a justice summit for the first time in British Columbia, and that continues today. And it's a chance to talk about the issues that are important when it comes to reforming the justice system. So it was terrifying, it was at the same time exhilarating, and it took the courage of a premier who said, I know you can do this job, I believe in you. And I've always been grateful to Premier Clark for that opportunity.
It's a great story. Your last cabinet post in the BC Liberal government at that time was from 2013 to 17 as Minister of Jobs, this is a mouthful, Minister of Jobs, Tourism and Skills Training, and Minister responsible for Labor. Try to get that on a t-shirt. And that led up to the past 7 years on the opposition side of the floor, where you've held a number of shadow minister roles, most recently as the official opposition critic for health, senior services, and long-term care. And I know personally that you've been a long-time passionate advocate in those areas. Did you enjoy your time, your role as an official opposition critic, or did you prefer to be on the government side?
Well, I think both of the experiences contributed to who I am today and the things that matter to me. Obviously, even your worst day in government, they say, is better than your best day in opposition. You know, I think that having had the opportunity to shape policy, to make decisions that impact British Columbians, to have a more hands-on ability to deal with the issues in northern British Columbia. Obviously, being in cabinet, being in government is essential to that. But on the other hand, in the democracy that we live in, the opposition has a really critical role to play. And one of the things that mattered to me was that we were an effective opposition, that we worked hard, that we raised the issues, we held government to account. And the most difficult thing about that is that often it requires some negativity. You're holding the government to account. And so people are often, why are you always so negative when you're in opposition? But there is a role for holding the government to account. And as we face a new parliament very shortly, that will become even more critical in my view. I think we are going to see a very polarized parliament, and I think that the role of the opposition will be absolutely critical.
And on that topic, I've seen you personally dealing with, as an official opposition member, dealing with those people that are in power, and you're one of the few people that I've seen politically who work hard to get things done no matter who's in power, right? And reaching across and trying to figure out where is their compromise. Compromise is something that's missing in politics right now. There's very little compromise. It's very black and white. But you have always, and I've seen you do this several times, reached out and said, how can we make this work? Or, hey, you did a great thing here. Let's work on this side of that. And how do why do you approach things a little differently than some politicians today who are more strictly critical or strictly antagonistic, let's put it that way?
I think British Columbians want a different type of politics. And I learned that firsthand, and I have to say how grateful I am to be part of Team Valemount, for example, where we made a very conscious decision to work together, setting aside partisan differences. It doesn't matter what party you belong to. It doesn't matter whether you're opposition or government. Bringing all levels of government together, including First Nations leaders, including our school board, elected school board trustees, working together on behalf of the people that have elected all of us. We share the same constituents. That has been very meaningful for me, and I have actually used Team Valemount as an example in many of the speeches that I've given at workshops and a variety of other places. It is an example that needs to be replicated across the province. And then on specific issues, I can tell you what one of them was that caused me to think differently. It's called geothermal.
Yeah.
And when I started to think about what would it take to move forward with a geothermal project in Valemount, I knew that I needed to find allies. And my allies were actually members of the Green Party. And it meant working with then leader Andrew Weaver, followed, of course, by Sonia Furstenau. And I remember the people of Valemount writing me notes or contacting me to say, thank you for doing politics differently. You've helped restore my faith. And that's really what we need to be thinking about. And it's very hard. I admit that I am very feisty when I'm in question period and when I'm holding the government to account.
Sure.
But there are ways to work together. People see former Health Minister Adrian Dix and I in question period, and one would think we were mortal enemies. Well, we're not. And behind the scenes, Adrian and I could have a conversation about things like defibrillators. They matter to me enormously. They are life-saving devices. And so just before the writ was dropped, Adrian came to Prince George and I stood beside him. We issued a joint press release, which, by the way, surprised many people, talking about a program that will see millions of dollars place defibrillators across this community and others. So it is possible. And I think that as we watch what unfolds in the next number of months, I think we're going to see British Columbians speak up about the need for people to work together in ways they have not before.
Absolutely. Amen to that. Let's hope that happens. With your vast experience in many government portfolios, your long time in education particularly, but you've been around the block. You know how to work the system, and you know how to form alliances, as you just talked about. Why did you never decide to put your hat into the ring as official leader of the party?
That's a really good question. I think part of it is you have to see yourself in that role. And I didn't see myself in that role. I stepped up when there was a need. And the confidence came from my caucus. That's how you get to be the interim leader. It's not the entire membership. It's not, the people who are part of our party across the province. It was our caucus, my teammates and colleagues. And I had just come through the most devastating personal experience in my life, losing my husband. And I felt like I needed to give back to the party that I had been a part of building. But I never saw myself as the permanent leader. I just felt that my skill set was better utilized as a constituency MLA, working hard as a cabinet minister when I was given that opportunity. But I've been asked many times, why I didn't consider a permanent leader's role, and I just felt that I was better suited to the day-to-day work of a constituency MLA. And I'm grateful that I could help the party during that period of time. I was told it would be a few months, and it ended up being 15 months, more than a year. Many people said that I was interim leader longer than some people are leaders. But it was a challenging time for us as a party, and I just felt that the time was right for me to step up at that moment.
Have you ever had aspirations for federal politics? I'm not just asking about now, but in your career, did you ever think about federal politics?
I've been asked a number of times to consider running federally, and one of the things that really was a deterrent for me was the fact that so much of your work is done away from the riding you represent. And I can say with all honesty that for me, the most important work that I have done is being a constituency MLA, being home. I came home virtually every week when I came home from Victoria because I needed to be in the community or in the Robson Valley region. That is a choice, and it is intentional. That is not possible when you are flying across the country. And so I just felt that, again, my skill set, my passion was here in British Columbia, creating a better future for my grandkids and people's children. So yes, I've been asked to consider many different roles, but for me, the one that was most comfortable and I think best suited to my skill set was being a good constituency MLA, and I hope that I have been, and also an effective cabinet minister and interim leader when I had that chance.
Yeah. We're here in the Coast Hotel where on August the 30th you spoke to your decision to withdraw your candidacy. And I asked you this question then, but I want to ask you again. Most politicians are acutely aware of where the majority of the votes come from in their ridings, and they focus their efforts primarily where the votes are, where the resources are. In this massive 31,539 square kilometers, the biggest amount of votes is obviously in the Prince George area. And yet, for as long as you've been the MLA here, you have made numerous trips, regular trips, to the smallest, farthest reaches of this huge riding. And you don't just zip in and zip out for an hour and shake a few hands like other politicians have done. You come, you participate, you listen. I've seen you sit and enjoy ice cream or whatever for hours on end and talk to people. You do what you can to help, even if the people you're speaking to, as you said earlier, are not from your political party, don't have your political persuasions. Why? Why did you feel the need to do that? Because it's very unusual.
I think that's a really great question. I think that I have had a profound sense of responsibility to the people who sent me to Victoria. And what I came to understand so much better over the years was the fact that so many people who live in smaller, more rural communities feel unheard. And I just took that responsibility very seriously, that whether you live in Dome Creek or Dunster or Tijon, or you live near Mount Robson or Valemount, Crescent Spur, McBride, you deserve to be heard. And that means that I shouldn't be bringing the messages home from Victoria to you. My job is to know what those issues are, what matters to the people of Valemount, not just the people of Prince George. And I I think that, for me, that responsibility weighed very heavily on me. I wanted people to know that I heard them, that I cared about them, and that I was going to take their message to Victoria. And that, for me, has ended up being one of the things I will treasure most. It isn't easy. It's a long drive. Winter roads are horrible. We don't have adequate or appropriate cell coverage,
Right.
much less, internet the way that it should be. But we do have each other, and I take that responsibility very seriously. And I can only hope that whoever has the privilege of serving, subsequent to me, will take that responsibility seriously. You have to be willing to step up and speak up. Otherwise, our needs will not matter. We've seen it already. In the current situation we're facing, not even all the leaders of parties came to Prince George, much less anywhere else in smaller northern communities.
Right.
And that speaks volumes to me. So that becomes the job of the MLA, is to take those concerns to where the seat of power is. And I will always be grateful for the people of the Robson Valley region. I know many of them by name. I know where they live. I know what they do. I think that's what being a good constituency MLA is all about, that it's not just a job. It's relationships, and it's friendships, and it's a lifelong caring that I will continue to feel for the people of the Robson Valley.
What has been your proudest accomplishment? We talked about your cabinet positions, but in your time as MLA, what's been your proudest accomplishment?
Well, I think one of the things that matters most to me is I have always tried to, in my role in Victoria, remind people that no matter where you live in this province, you are entitled to a great education, a great healthcare system, that you shouldn't have to be on a plane or driving through the Fraser Canyon to get cancer care or heart care for your needs, cardiac care. So I think things like the Northern Cancer Centre, that means the absolute world to me. And it was a fight, even with our own government, making the case that we were big enough that we could sustain the cancer center. And look where it's full. I mean, heaven help us, what would we be doing without it?
Right.
There's still a gap, and that's one of the reasons why the way that my career came to an end is so difficult. We have to have cardiac care in northern British Columbia. You shouldn't have to be on a bus or a plane to be going to get cardiac care that could be done here. So that's what has driven my career, is looking at, what do we need to do to improve the service levels in every part of this province. No one expects to get brain surgery in McBride, but they do expect to be able to be cared for, their basic healthcare needs, a great public education. And that really is what has driven my career, is making sure that wherever you live and where we live, that you have the opportunity for a great education and for your healthcare needs, as many as possible that can be taken care of closer to home.
Absolutely. What would you say would be your biggest disappointment in your time as MLA?
Well, maybe because it's fresh, I'm not really sure. I would have to say the way my career ended is probably the biggest disappointment I have. I've always believed that my career would end in one of two ways: that I would make that choice with my family, or that the electorate would democratically retire me. I just heard that from a person who was an MP. He was democratically retired. I always thought it would be one of those two ways, and yet that's not how this happened. And so I want to work really hard to remember the positive legacy, the work that I've done, the people that I've met. This wasn't how I intended my career to end, but it's how it will end. And it doesn't mean that I will ever stop being an advocate, an ally for the people who live here. And I fully intend to stay engaged, to speak up. And, it's the first time I will watch an election night results with someone other than my family. I'm actually going to do some commentary, and that will be hard, going to vote and not seeing my name on a ballot. But that's probably the most disappointing. There's still work to be done,
Right.
but that will be given to someone else to do.
Yeah. Going back to the press conference on August the 30th here, you had your family with you and your grandsons, and you talked about you were just on vacation with them and they wanted to take you on the roller coasters. And you said, no, thank you. I'm already on the longest roller coaster of my life. What did you mean by that?
Well, first of all, as you can imagine, I got the news about my future basically on the day that I had planned to spend 4 or 5 days with my grandsons, which I do every summer. We did that prior to Billy's death, and I continued that. So it was very difficult, but very important. So yes, my grandsons were urging me to take roller coaster rides with them. I think my reference to that was simply about the fact that every time there's an election, it's important to evaluate. Are you still capable of doing the job with the degree of attention that it needs? Is your health okay? I always would have a discussion with my family about is this the time? And I think the difficult part was I literally said to my family, I'd like to go one more time, and certainly I had been encouraged to run by our leader. And my family said to me, one more time, and we'd like some grandma left at the end of it. So to go from literally working with my family, talking to my family, and convincing myself and them that we were in it for one more round, to suddenly have that change was very difficult. I think people also have to recognize that I had spent most of my adult life helping build this party. When we began the BC Liberal Party, it was 10 people in a basement, and in communities across this province, including here. To think that we were able to build a successful right-wing party that was in government for more than 16 years, and I was lucky enough to be in cabinet for all of those years, that's pretty extraordinary. To have it end in the way that it did is always something that I will struggle with. So for me, it was the perfect description of a roller coaster ride without actually having to get on one.
You've been through a lot. You've worked your tail off representing us in Victoria all these years. The community gives you our if I can share that with you, our deepest gratitude, because it's been a wonderful roller coaster ride for us in a good way, not in a bad way. You deserve a rest, of course, as long a rest as you want to take. But you love people, and I know that, and I know that you love helping people. I have a suspicion it's not going to be very long before you're doing something, maybe not in politics, but before you're itching to take on a new challenge. We're filming this on October 18th, the day before the election. I know that's a day that's going to sting for you. It has to, even though you'll never show it. That's your way. You deserve to go out on your own way. We're all saddened for you that that's not the way that it unfolded. And really, we all like to give you a big hug if we can for that. Have you started, at this point, thoughts about what the future might hold for you? Being the hardest working, most dedicated MLA we've ever known. It's totally fine if your answer is, just to go out on a beach somewhere and have a cold drink or take a leisurely stroll up to Kinney Lake or whatever it is. But have you thought about that?
Well, I'm very lucky. People are already asking me to help them with things, and I'm really, really excited about that. I certainly don't intend to, withdraw from public life. I intend to be present in my community, my region. And, people have ideas and projects and things they want to move forward. So, it's not about getting another job. It's about people with really great ideas and things they want to move forward and saying, hey, will you have coffee and help me or talk to me about that? I'm very interested also in, obviously, the Special Olympics Games that are coming to Prince George. And I think there's so much work to be done still. So I don't intend to withdraw from my community or my region. Not sure exactly what the future looks like, but it will always be based on the love I have for the place that I get to call home. The fact that when I look around and I think about, yes, there are challenges, but we are so very lucky to live here. You know, when I think about the magnificence of Mount Robson and the people who live in that corridor and the things that we get to enjoy, those will always matter to me. And so I'm going to take a little bit of time. I'm enjoying actually doing some homework with my grandsons. We're working on grade 10 English together, and so that's been really special to be able to spend some time more directly with my grandsons. I would not be able to do that. But make no mistake about it, I will miss being the MLA for Prince George Valemount. It has shaped very much who I am, and I'm grateful. As much as people are grateful for an MLA, I'm grateful for them. I have been stopped everywhere in the last number of weeks, cared for, and people expressing their concern about how this happened. But in the end of the day, it's just been the honor of my life.
Wonderful. On November the 1st, again here in the Coast Inn of the North, your friends and supporters are gathering to host a night to honor Shirley Bond and her lifelong contributions to public service in our community. There's going to be speeches, of course, there'll be videos, there'll be laughs, there'll be tears, lots of great stories, I know. What does that mean to you?
Well, first of all, I have to tell you that one thing I did say was, please don't call it a roast. I'm always uncomfortable with those things. And secondly, I'd prefer it not to be a retirement dinner because, I don't intend to just disappear. But I'm really overwhelmed. I mean, I understand it sold out very quickly, and I'm grateful that my grandsons and my family will be there with me. That really matters to me, and I think it's an important opportunity for them to sort of understand where Grandma's been all these years, and so that matters a lot to me. But I think it's going to be a special evening. It'll be hard, but in the end of the day, it will be the next phase for me. And all I made them promise was when they asked me if they could do it, I said please don't make it a roast and please don't call it a retirement dinner.
Nice. When you look back on it all, what do you hope people will remember about your time as Prince George Valemount, Prince George Mount Robson, MLA, and what will you remember most?
I hope they... it's interesting. We've been receiving a lot of notes and cards and letters and calls, and a lot of them start off with, "I don't agree with you politically," or "I never voted for you," and then there's a but. But I appreciate the work that you've done. I appreciate how you stood up for the North. I appreciate that you worked as hard as you did. And I hope that's what I'm remembered for. It's my parents really influenced me, my dad in particular, when he said, do the right thing, make a difference. And I hope that's what I'm remembered for. I really hope that, the hardest working MLA hangs on for a while. I think it is about setting the bar and creating an expectation of what an MLA should do. And what will I remember the most? Well, first of all, a family that is forgiving and flexible, that walked this journey with me every step of the way through the good, the bad, and the ugly, and there's been a lot of all of those. Staff that are extraordinary. And whether they were in Victoria, whether they're here in Prince George, you cannot do this job without people who support you every single day and who share the values that you do. And I am so lucky. I have an extraordinary staff today. I have worked with amazing people, public servants who have, for their entire lives, worked for the betterment of British Columbia. I got to work with them, and I learned from them. So I will remember those people who helped me with the job that I had to do. I will always be grateful. I will miss my current staff a great deal. You end up with a work family. That's what happens. And but I know we're going to stay in touch. We like to golf with each other. I'm not very good, but we like each other's company and we like being outside. So I'm going to count on my team in Prince George continuing to do those things with me in the future.
Well, thank you very much. It's been an honor getting to know you all these years. I'm not saying goodbye because I know I'm going to see you many times. I know you're never going to disappear. Thank you for everything
you.
that you've done for us and will continue to do for us, and all the best in the future.
Well, let me just thank you. Valemount is very lucky to have Valemount Community Television and a person like you who tells the story of Valemount in such a poignant way. It's been an honor to get to know you, and you've helped me understand the community that I represent. So I will be there. I love Vale coffee. I have to come and get that refilled every now and again, and there are so many things in the Robson Valley region that are part of my life and will always be. So thank you for the opportunity to share my story today.
We'll leave the light on for you.
Thanks.